Hey, welcome back. We've got a solid fight card behind us with Angela Hill and Michelle Waterson last week. We're diving into a pretty solid fight card this coming week. I expect it to be about as exciting. There's a lot of potential in this one, and it's obviously headlined by Colby Covington as he faces Tyron Woodley. This is kind of a fight that means a lot to both guys. Woodley has to prove that he's still kind of a high-level fighter, that he's not way past his prime at 37, and Covington, obviously coming off of the first loss in a while, the first loss since all of that trash that he talked. He just got TKO'd. He just got his jaw broken by Kamaru Usman. He's got a lot to prove here as well. And obviously the odds favor him, and we're going to get into all of that. We're going to start off much earlier on the card. We're going to get first into the Ewell versus Irwin Rivera fight, the bantamweight matchup. Ewell is very fast, especially early. He tends to kind of get tired by the second round. He's slower by the third round. He's kind of average speed and very minimal power by that point, but early on he's fast, he's explosive, tall guy. Like more than anything, he's a boxer. He throws almost no kicks, doesn't have the best kick defense, and I would say he prefers to counter more than anything else. He just kind of goads you with the jab and then gets out of the way until you're ready to throw punches at him, and then he blasts you back. And he's got the speed and timing to pull it off, at least early in the fight again. Not the best takedown defense and not the best on the ground. Like, he won't get up if you got him down. You want to keep him down, you can probably do that. I could see him being susceptible to submissions against a good grappler. Rivera is a solid southpaw striker, pretty short guy compared to Ewell, as you guys can see by the stats. Big disadvantage there. I think 7 inches of height, 9 inches in reach. Rivera does have good takedowns. He's got good leg kicks. He's kind of a relentless guy, right? He made his UFC debut against Chika Chikadze, and he was outsized by a big margin. He had to take it at 145 as kind of a last minute thing. He still pushed in the last few seconds of that third round like he did early on in that fight. How did he have the gas tank to keep pushing through that beating against a much bigger man? I don't know, but he's impressive. He's coming off of his first UFC win, and he's going in here now against Ewell. Look, Ewell will have, I said 7 is 5-inch height advantage, 9-inch reach advantage, right? But I'm edging toward Rivera, who will probably lose the first round, but I think he'll start to take over after that. I think he's just got like relentless will, and I think he'll know to put serious pressure on Ewell. I especially like that Rivera actually trains with the former Black Zillion Sanford MMA under Henry Hooft, and I think that's really going to be a nice boon in his favor here. So I like Rivera in this one, probably by decision. You know, I guess there's a chance he can TKO an exhausted Ewell, but I wouldn't bet on it. Keep in mind, though, Ewell hits hard early, and it's possible that he tags him. Next up, we've got a matchup between Darren Minner. This one's weird because the UFC even doesn't have the update on who Darren Minner is actually fighting, which is hysterical. Other websites have the update. He's actually going up against... Darren Minner is going up against TJ Laramie. The UFC doesn't have the stats updated yet, which is pretty funny considering other websites do. I think that Laramie should be able to avoid Miner's takedowns and punish him standing. The 22-year-old, Laramie's a real young guy, right? He's stocky, he's powerful. Minner has a great ground game and could catch something early. He's super explosive, super dangerous for the first 3 minutes of a fight, and then he's exhausted if you survive that. I'm going to edge with Laramie to survive that, but his Contender Series fight, his last fight, he was kind of close to getting caught in a couple submissions by a less dangerous guy than Minner is. So if he's foolish enough on that ground and if he chooses to hit the ground with Minner, he could be in danger there. But I do like TJ Laramie to take the win here. Just a short, stocky, powerful fella. I like the look of his style and along with his body type. I think he takes advantage of it well. Next up, we've got Journey Newsome, who is going up against Randy Costa. This one is very interesting to me, right? Both of these guys have serious power in their right hands. Newsome is short, but he's got solid boxing, great defense, serious power in his right hand, like I said, consistent leg kicks, good takedown defense, and pretty good grappling. Like, he's not a submission expert, right? But he does have good takedowns, good takedown defense, and he's able to hold you down if he needs to. Should be 1-1 in the UFC, but his last win is overturned because he popped for marijuana, which is absolutely ridiculous that this still happens in the world today. And he also lost a decision to Ricardo Ramos on short notice in his UFC debut. Ramos is a much bigger man, taller than his Costa. Ramos is super experienced, super dangerous on the ground and on the feet, and wasn't able to get a whole lot done against Journey. He was competitive the entire time. Obviously, when Ramos was able to get top position, he was able to look good for a little bit until Newsom worked his way back to his feet. Costa is 1-1 in the UFC. Serious power in his hands. He's super tall for bantamweight, and he switches stances. He literally constantly is switching, not really marrying one or the other. He's got questionable cardio, though. As we saw in his UFC debut against Brandon Davis, he kind of blew his load, hurt Davis a couple times, and Davis was able to take over and then submitted him in that second round. Look, there's a chance Costa finishes early because there's always a chance that happens when he's involved, but I'm leaning towards Newsom here. We should have the boxing to avoid most of Costa's offense. His defense is solid. He should be able to hit that right hand once in a while as well without staying in the pocket to take those dangerous shots from Costa. And I actually think he has better wrestling. He should be able to get that takedown and work from there. So I liked Journey Newsom since before his UFC debut when I was watching tape on him in his going into that Ricardo Ramos fight. And I was like, man, it's a shame this kid has to make a debut against this guy because he can be something special. And I still think so. I think he's going to do well here. I'm hoping his chin holds up. Next up, we've got a matchup between Jessica Rose Clark and Sarah Alpar. UFC is not really super up to date on Sarah Alpar. She does not look like the silhouette, I assure you. So here's the thing, right? One of these is a tested veteran in Clark. She's a scrappy fighter, solid stand-up. And when she loses, it's to some of the best. She's got wins over Beck Rawlings and Paige Van Zandt, but she has lost to some top tenors in that 125-pound and 135-pound division. I believe she's competed at both in the UFC. Alpar is a heavy-handed pressure fighter. She can get kind of sloppy in exchanges. Like if she hurts an opponent, she's just going to keep winging, not with a whole lot of technique or prowess per se, but she does have pop in those hands. And if her opponent's throwing back at her, she's just going to keep throwing. It's going to be a sloppy slugfest, right? Good takedowns, solid grappling on Alpar. Solid cardio too in the third round. She's still going pretty strong in one of the fights that I've watched of hers. She's going in obviously to her UFC debut here. Clark is much more technical standing, and even though Alpar hits hard, I expect that she's going to be fine there. Alpar has good takedowns and top control, but Clark has good takedown defense and solid footwork, which should keep her kind of out of those double leg shots. She won't be standing right in front of Alpar to allow her to do that. Clark also does a good job of getting up and switching to top position when she's on her back. And I think that'll come in handy here as well. I have some concerns about Clark still being fresh late. Like she sometimes looks pretty worn out in that third round. And I do have concerns there because I don't think that Alpar has like an off button. She's going to keep going, keep trying. So yeah, I expect Rose Clark to be more technical, use her footwork to counter and land big shots on the feet, largely avoid the ground and be able to get up if she does end up there. Next, we've got Jordan Espinosa versus David Dvorak. I actually think this is a particularly interesting matchup here. The thing about Espinosa is like he's super, super fast, right? Early in a fight, but he does slow down like any other super fast athlete. Like you can't really keep that going unless you're using performance enhancing drugs. You can't really keep that going for multiple rounds if you're continually putting shots out there. If you're tempering yourself and barely throwing, it's doable, right? He pot shots from the outside, mostly jabs before kind of exiting the pocket. I shouldn't say mostly jabs. He throws crosses. He throws power shots from out there. Pretty decent leg kicks. The thing is that when he's being backed up, he's not doing nearly as well. But he needs a lot of space when he's working. So I think the pressure fighter would be his worst case scenario. Good conditioning on this guy. Used to be kind of shoddy, but he's improved it. Good entry on double leg takedowns. Doesn't always finish from there, but he has great timing, goes right under his opponent's punches. Not a very good ground game once he gets there, though. He's been submitted, I believe, twice in the UFC now, once from up top against Matt Schnell and once from the bottom against the fighter Alex Perez, I think, who's phenomenal. No shame in losing to him, but Perez knew just got to get in his face, press him up against that cage with punches, and then take him the heck down. That worked. So susceptible to submissions, right? 4 of his 7 losses are by submission. And I can see that playing a factor here. Dvorak is a Czech fighter with solid fundamentals, generally switches stances. More like he debuted at age 18 in Pro MMA. And then since he was 19, he's been undefeated for 7 years now, 14 fights straight. And that includes his UFC debut against Bruno Silva. He got rocked in that fight with a front kick to the jaw. dropped, and then, after looking good in the majority of that first round, and then came back in the second round and still won the second round, and then came back in the third round and won that round. So that shows experience. The guy took it on short notice, and he still performed that way. That shows experience. It shows conditioning. It shows that he's able to keep his composure. So I like this guy. Espinosa is fast and well-conditioned. He's more athletic than Dvorak in this matchup, right? But Dvorak has solid timing on his counters, and timing is really what beats speed, I think. Dvorak will have the better ground game in this matchup. That's a big factor. I think Dvorak should be able to, at some point, get takedowns, and Espinosa can't seem to help going for takedowns, and I can see Dvorak turning it over and getting top position. He's more crafty, Dvorak is, partially because of the experience edge, so I'm going with him by a small margin. It could easily go either way because of the speed discrepancy, and if Dvorak chooses not to pressure, that's going to be an issue here because he absolutely needs to pressure to win this fight. But I'm definitely sticking with David Dvorak. I'm fairly excited about him. Like I don't know if he's going to make top 5 territory, but he's got top 10, top 15 written all over him. Very skilled and experienced. Next, we've got a matchup between Mayra Bueno Silva and Mayra Romero. This one is... it looks on paper like a little bit of a squash match, right? Even though Mayra Borella is coming off of her first career loss, she's kind of a monster, and she lost to Marina Moroz, and Marina Moroz barely baited out of that fight. Like if you show me the last round of that fight and you ask me which one of these two fighters I want to be, I want it to be Silva at the end of that fight because she kind of roughed up Moroz, even though Moroz was able to bank 2 of those rounds in very competitive rounds, right? She's not she's a pressure fighter. She's got a solid jab cross, super fast with that. Good kicks and knees, right? She can be super aggressive with purely kicks for 3 minutes straight in a fight. Solid knees once she gets into that clinch. Throws plenty of kicks and high kicks, which I think will be effective against Mayra Romero. Very aggressive physically and strong. Excellent submissions, including off her back. She's got an armbar finish over her name escapes me. She recently fought but an armbar finish over a really good grappler who was able to take her down, and she submitted her with a clean, beautiful armbar off her back. Her one loss is to Moroz, and like I said, Moroz barely survived that fight. So my only criticism of her, I would say, is her get-up game isn't awesome. If she's on her back, she will work for submissions rather than work to get up. And if she doesn't get that submission, then she's probably losing that round. So don't love that. And also the fact that her stand-up game is not super high level. She can't set up a big strike, that'll come later in a fight. She just throws explosive shit over and over again, the things that she's used to throwing. She can't counter your counter. She's not that sort of fighter. Although she is happy to engage in the pocket in an exchange. Mayra Romero Borella is an Italian fighter who trains at an American top team in Florida. Underwhelming in the UFC. She's 2-4 there, right? Coming off a submission loss to another journeywoman in Courtney Casey, which is not very impressive. Kind of a jack of all trades. Not great anywhere and doesn't suck anywhere either. She does get at least one takedown per every fight. That's kind of the one consistent thing about her, I would say. I will say, though, she's 2-4 in the UFC. She's not great. Let's face it. She trains at ATT, to her credit. Silva is better standing. She's better on the ground. She's going to, I think, hunt Borella down and punish her. There's a chance that Borella steals around, possibly too, by getting a couple of takedowns and avoiding submissions, but I think it's just as likely that Borella gets submitted if she does get that top position. So I like Bueno Silva all the way here. Bueno Silva, excuse me. I'm having a hard time pronouncing that name. Meerschaert versus Eduardo Gargori, unfortunately, was scrapped. That's a fight that I was looking forward to for a couple of reasons. I think Garagori's training partner tested positive for COVID or something like that. Next up, we've got what I think is a pretty damn good fight between Kevin Holland, Darren Stewart. Holland is tall, rangy, has solid, fast striking when he's forced to use it, because he otherwise kind of prefers to go to the ground, even though he claims he wants to just stand there and strike. He prefers to go to the ground. He has this weird kind of Luthez press takedown where he just kind of jumps up with his stomach into his opponent's face basically, and like hopes that his opponent falls onto his back and he ends up a mount. It works sometimes, which is kind of crazy, but like not the best wrestling. I would say he can be taken down almost at will, even though he's, again, pretty good there, but he's super fast and explosive on the feet, and he uses that range really well, as you showed in his last fight, right? So I just want him to do that more, because otherwise he is winning super close decisions that he probably doesn't deserve. He kind of tries to stunt on opponents all the time and kind of looks like an idiot doing it half the time. And he doesn't like to be pressured. Like I said, he tends to get those super close decisions in the judges' scorecards sometimes when he kind of clearly doesn't deserve it. Stewart is 5-5 in the UFC, right? Not super impressive on paper, I hear you. He's got decent pressure, power striking. Will go for takedowns when needed. He can be taken down. He can have a slow start and then kind of get aggressive as the fight goes on. His cardio is pretty good at this point. He's an experienced veteran. Here's the thing about that 5-5 record, right? Started his UFC career 0-3. And then has been 5-2 since then. So he's not to be overlooked. I think he has a shot here, and I think the odds are probably a little bit too wide, even though I am sticking with Holland and I'm picking him. I kind of see Darren Stewart as a gatekeeper for the prospects at this point. If you can beat him, you are, potentially on your way to that top 15 territory. If you can't, then, you're barely bottom of the run kind of UFC level, or you need a lot more experience. There's a chance that Stewart pressures him effectively and wins rounds from top position even, if he can avoid the submissions off of Kevin Holland's back. But Holland should have the range striking and the ground game advantage here. So I'm going to go with Holland. I also think Holland's probably going to be the faster man in the matchup. Next, we are going to, by the way, that was the first fight of the main card. And again, I just think top to bottom, this is a pretty good card. A lot to look forward to, some great fights on here. This one is, I think, particularly interesting, an interesting test for Mackenzie Dern. Dern is a BJJ world champion, right? She's known more for her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than anything else. Obviously, she's marketable because she's attractive and very busy on social media and all of that. Beat Gabby Garcia, who is 100 pounds heavier than her, and definitely has more testosterone in her system than I do. Really impressive win, honestly. Gabby Garcia is just a giant. She has been in the best shape of her life since coming back from giving birth. I think her daughter is like a little bit more than 1 year old at this point, and she's coming into her second fight since, which is pretty damn impressive. Her third fight back. The first fight was a loss to, I believe, Vivian Araujo, who's literally one of the best in the division, shining prospect. And then she was able to get a win against Hannah Cyphers by submission. It was kind of rough going there in the beginning of that, and that's kind of dangerous. Like the fact that her takedown rate, right, if you look at her stats here, her takedown rate is 7%. She gets 7% of the takedowns that she tries for. Like, that's scary. Granted, she probably tried for 25 against Araujo and didn't get a single one, so that brought her average down. Still, like, that is not an impressive number that you want to rely on as a high-level grappler. But she is fighting someone that can be taken down. Markos has a good ground game herself, good jiu-jitsu. She submitted Angela Hill in the first round with an armbar, which is very impressive, especially given where Angela is in the division at this point. Decent takedowns, but doesn't go for many considering the quality of her ground game. Pretty sharp striking. She's developed quite a bit in that sense over the last several years. She doesn't really get up well from the bottom, even though her top game is solid, and she's got, again, decent enough striking at this point. I'll go with Dern, who will have at least be able to like hold Markos down if things get hairy. I think she has a better gas tank than Markos. Ever since she came back from that pregnancy, she looks in way better shape, and I think part of that is her conditioning is way up from what it used to be, and even when she didn't have great conditioning, she never stopped trying. So here's the thing. She's got multiple third-round submissions, Mackenzie Dern has. If you've got good submission defense, and Randa Markos is a good submission fighter in her own right, Randa Markos is going to be tired in that third round, so maybe that's worth a bet. It'll probably give you like plus 800 odds. Put $10 down in it, and worst case, you lose $10. Best case, you're up 80, and we all have a good night. She should be competitive on the feet. Dern should, right? Even on the feet, she shouldn't be like way far behind, even though I think overall Randa Markos is the better striker. So I do like Dern there, but I can see this being a decision for Markos. Markos has this fascinating thing where she wins and loses every single fight. And what I mean by that is she wins and loses every other fight. She's done this consistently for years now. Wins one, loses one, wins one, loses one. She's up for a win here. So watch out is all I'm saying. I'd be careful betting on Dern for that reason, maybe alone. Next up, we've got matchup between Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann. This one is, I think, just about guaranteed to be exciting. Here's the thing. Walker recently switched to training under Faraz Zahabi at TriStar in Canada. Super explosive early. Like, if he touches you with the tip of his knee early in the first round, you're probably going to go out. If he touches you with the tip of his elbow, you're probably getting knocked out. Just throws crazy flying shit. I'm figuring that Faraz Zahabi will temper him, teach him a jab maybe. Should be interesting to watch the development of his game, but he's as athletic as anyone in that division, maybe more so. The thing is, he doesn't have a great chin. He doesn't have a good gas tank. He doesn't have a good ground game. His takedown defense isn't great, and his get-up game sucks. Once he's down, you can probably keep him down if you're pretty good at that. And his MMA IQ isn't very high. That's, again, where Faraz Zahabi comes in. Spann trains at Fortis MMA, and I'm a big believer in Saif Sayoud and that team. They're kind of a young team, but they've got a lot of prospects doing really well. A couple of veterans who went over there and are now on just a win streak, like Uriah Hall is one example of that. He's on a 7-fight win streak. Spann is solid striking fundamentals. He has power in his hands. He will go for takedowns against someone who has power, as he showed in his last fight against Sam Alvey, but he's been KO'd twice, so his chin and recovery, honestly, are questionable. And he should have lost that decision to Sam Alvey. His last fight should be actually coming off of one loss instead of a 7-fight win streak. It was a super close decision. Alvey was able to counter him consistently. I'm worried about the fact that he didn't know that Alvey mainly has one strike to worry about, and he kept walking right into that right hook of Alvey's as a southpaw, right? That concerns me. So there's definitely a risk here, but I'm going to take Ryan Spann. Part of the big question, I think, is going to be, will Spann be able to take Johnny Walker down? He knows to take good strikers down, as he showed in his last fight. I think he should be able to, especially if he can get past that first round. There's a chance Johnny Walker catches that quick knockout. But given that Faraz Zahabi's going to temper him a bit, I think maybe there's a lower chance of that. While Walker can KO Spann, which makes this a pick'em, I expect Spann to get Walker to tire, whether it be in the clinch or from top position, and he should win by decision, maybe late stoppage. I mean, the man does have power, and I expect that Johnny Walker's going to be pretty tired, although I'm sure he's been focusing on his conditioning with Faraz Zahabi. Next, we've got a matchup, between a super prospect, somebody that's seen by a lot of people as, future champion material. He's seen as the Khabib of 170/185 pounds, taking this fight at middleweight against Gerald Meerschaert, who trains under Duke Rufus with the likes of Tyron Woodley. He's really only dangerous on the ground since he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a tall southpaw with decent striking. It's definitely improving. If he's got an exhausted tiny opponent in front of him like Darren Wynn, he can make that work in the third round. But he's incredibly slow. He isn't very athletic and doesn't have the best chin. He was stopped, I think, his last fight or a couple of fights ago in the first round by a guy that, hasn't shown all that much knockout power thus far in the UFC. His name escapes me. He can stop prospects the way he did with Darren Win. Like, he's been in this position before, right? 2-4 in his last 6 bouts, but he could easily be 4-2 if that Kevin Holland decision had gone his way. And then there was another, I think it was Eric Anders' decision that should have gone his way. A lot of folks think it should have. Khamzat Chimaev trains at All-Star MMA in Sweden. That's the Alexander Gustafsson gym out there. Seen as a blue chip prospect, like I said, mostly because he dominated a terrible middleweight and an undersized welterweight who's actually a lightweight in his 2 UFC bouts. This will be his first somewhat formidable opponent who's been able to have some success in the UFC. He has solid wrestling, excellent control from up top, and damaging ground and pound. He's pretty relentless with that. His stand-up is not very developed, but he has super heavy hands, and he's pretty fast given his athleticism. Earlier in his career, I saw opponents standing up from bottom position. I saw opponents defending takedowns successfully, so I don't think that, look, he could have made huge improvements, but I don't necessarily know that he's that much of a dominator. I think that Damian Maia is going to be really tough for him, but I can see him beating Meerschaert, right? If Khamzat didn't have serious power, if Meerschaert didn't have a fragile chin, I'd probably pick Meerschaert in this matchup. But Khamzat is faster, more durable, he's stronger, he hits harder, he has better wrestling. Judging by what Oscar Piachetta and Jack Hermanson were able to do to Jack Hermanson in the first rounds of their fights, I think Khamzat's going to be able to get right on top and just pound away. The question is, will Meerschaert survive and actually show us whether or not Khamzat has some conditioning, whether or not Khamzat can fight through some tough moments. I'm not so sure. I think there's like discussion now of the fact that for Meerschaert, hurting Khamzat badly enough so that he can't fight Demian Maia next, that would be a win. Fuck that. It's MMA. You either win or you lose. That's ridiculous. I definitely look. Would I mind seeing Meerschaert pull off a huge upset? It would be exciting, sure, but Khamzat is the serious prospect, and I'm not saying I'm buying into all of this crazy talk about him, needing to fight champions immediately because he dominated two shitty fighters. But I do think he's worth a prospect watch, and I definitely think he's a very talented guy. Next, a matchup that's guaranteed to bring us some fireworks, right? Donald Cerrone facing up with Niko the hybrid price. Cerrone used to be a high-level journeyman, more maybe a gatekeeper to the stars. Like if you beat him, you are top 5. If you lose to him, then you're a prospect who's not quite ready for the big time yet, or you're kind of a journeyman yourself. He's known for exciting fights because he's a finisher on the ground with the submissions. He's a finisher standing up with his knees, with his head kicks, occasional boxing knockouts too. The thing is that at 37, he's barely able to take a clean shot without crumbling to the floor, not to the body and not to the chin at this point, right? Like his liver used to be his kind of weak spot. Now his chin is just as weak, so he's got 2 easy targets. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, but 3 of those fights were literally against the best in Ferguson, Gaethje, and McGregor. He's an expert at beating short wrestle boxers, but has trouble against pressure fighters and southpaws. He's got terrible record against southpaws in it throughout his career. Solid kicks from a distance, excellent knees as a counter and in the clinch, right? He used to have bad takedown defense, but his wrestling is something that's developed a lot, especially offensively. He's really, really solid there. Goes right under your 1-2 before you even realize that he's shooting, and he's got your legs up in the air with a double leg. Submissions are serious, but mostly from his back. He doesn't tend to finish guys from top position by submission as far as I've seen. He was at least stunned in the first round by his last 4 opponents. Ferguson stunned him at the very end of that first round, and then he got knocked out 3 times in the first round. So his chin, it's a real worry point for him. He's not particularly fast at this point in his career, so he relies on timing for counters. If Cerrone has room to work, if you step back and give him time to breathe in between his offense, he's going to light you up. He's very good from there, right? If he can kind of like Anthony Pettis did with him in their last bout, and that fight could have easily gone either way. A lot of folks think that Cerrone deserved it, so maybe he should be on a 1-fight winning streak rather than a 4-fight losing streak. If he can execute takedowns, he's effective, obviously. But if he gets finished, it's usually in the first or second round. Once he survives that, he's competitive with just about anyone, it seems like. Niko prices up madman. Prefers to counter early, slowly picks up the pace as the fight goes. Before you know it, he's swarming his opponents, just nonstop offense. Also, if he has his opponent hurt, he is all over it. He is insane killer instinct. There's a reason that a fight in his career has never gone a decision. The man is a monster. He's an opportunistic finisher with multiple knockouts from bottom position, which is kind of unheard of. He's got an up kick knockout. He's got a hammer fist from bottom position over Randy Brown. Solid front kick to the chin and to the body, and I think that could play a factor in this matchup. His chin isn't untouchable either, so he's a little too willing to mix it up. Look, Cerrone is slow, but Price is slower. Cerrone doesn't respond well to pressure, but Price doesn't pressure early at least. So Cerrone will have a chance potentially to get into his groove here. But Cerrone's chin is terrible at this point. He's used to being the bigger man against kind of shorter guys, but Price is just as tall and much wider. He hits like a truck. Like the guy just in any position can knock a man out. I think the best route for Cerrone is to get takedowns. If he can do that, he can absolutely win this fight. I think that's his territory. As long as he doesn't get knocked out from top position, he should be okay there. But since Price knocked out the last 2 6-foot-tall former lightweights that he fought, I expect he's going to do the same thing here. I think, unfortunately, Donald Cerrone being anywhere near the top level of MMA is gone, and I'm kind of disappointed that the UFC couldn't give him a fight where somebody didn't hit incredibly hard. Maybe a more winnable fight, but he can't win this. It's just a matter of if he can survive that first round, which there's a chance Niko Price might just let him given the style matchup here. So we've got Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley, the main event. Nobody's super curious, right, about what the picks are here. Most people are picking Colby Covington, probably for good reason. Woodley is a Division I NCAA wrestling hard, explosive right-hand counter. He kind of closes his eyes, shifts his head off the center line, and just swings it. It has worked for him several times on the counter. he constantly backs up against the cage. He doesn't use his wrestling anymore, right? He's scored 2 takedowns in the last 6 years. I was shocked when I was looking at his stats. His defensive wrestling hasn't been looking good lately either. He gave up 4 takedowns in his last 2 fights. To be honest, that's what the stats say. I remember more than 4 takedowns. But prior to that, he gave up 1 takedown in his entire UFC career. So really is saying something about where Tyron Woodley currently is. Also, the level of competition, of course, is kind of the next generation of the elite of that welterweight division. He's got really low strike output, has never landed more than 60 strikes in a 5-round fight. That's insanity. 11 strikes a round is a lot to ask for, Tyron Woodley. Like, that is your most. Lands about 2 strikes per minute, a little bit more than 2 throughout his career. Colby Covington has got elite cardio, extremely hardworking and disciplined. I've heard that, like, he goes to bed at 10:30 p.m., does not fuck around with that. I heard he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do any funny business. The guy is super, super dedicated, super strict on himself, despite the asshole that we all know him to be. Also, Division I All-American wrestler. He's a pressure grappler and a pressure striker. He just kind of continues to throw offense, just continually throws hands, not with superpower, although he has improved his power lately. He averages 5 takedowns per fight, and in his last 2 fights, he's landed over 300 strikes. It is actually insane. I know both fights were 5 rounds, but he's landing that many strikes, and that's just unbelievable. Switched from American Top Team after he was kicked out to MMA Masters, which is also in Florida, kind of an up-and-coming gym that is bringing out some prospects slowly. I think he's going to improve the quality of that team, and I could see that team really being focused on him. Look, Woodley landed 326 strikes in his last 8 fights combined. Covington landed 322 strikes in his last 2 fights. That's the kind of output difference we're talking about here. Covington pressures opponents against the cage. Woodley automatically backs himself up against the cage. Woodley has power in his right hand, but Colby has a really good chin. Granted, he is coming off a TKO loss where his jaw was broken. Woodley's cardio is okay, especially if he just kind of tempers himself. Colby's cardio is elite. So here's what's in Woodley's favor, right? The fact that Colby's coming off that knockout loss, TKO loss, where his jaw was broken. Maybe that right hand clips him. Maybe he can drop him and finish. Maybe the jaw re-breaks and Covington gets, all these memories from the recovery and all that. Maybe it fucks with his head. But I think this will be a one-sided fight because Tyron Woodley is a fraction of the fighter he used to be. And he used to be a good fighter. He was never elite in my opinion. I know it's controversial. He was champion. I hear you. But if you really look at the wins, the quality of the wins, if you look at the fact that every one of his opponents, except for maybe Thompson, had major holes, and Thompson is a great style matchup for him. Colby Covington is in his prime, and he is elite. So I expect that Colby will be able to win either a very one-sided decision. I'll be surprised if Woodley gets more than 1 round here. I will be shocked. If he gets 1 round, I would be somewhat surprised, but it's possible. I guess maybe he could tag him. But yeah, I like Covington all the way here. Hate to see the guy win, but he's really fucking good. Let's not kid ourselves. He's probably going to win this fight, and I hope they give him a much tougher matchup next time so we can tag that jaw again. Getting riled up. Thank you all for listening. Check out my podcast, the MMA Geek Sea Level Podcast. The link is below. Go a little more in-depth with my podcast partner, Nick Braccia. Also, check me out on Instagram and Twitter. All links are at the bottom of the description. Thank you for watching.